Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be finish the application that I made some time ago about. It's a full stack application with Svelte, MongoDB, Express, Node.js, and we have it here. I will link in the description the video where we built this part of the app. So it's pretty basic here. We only have a way to add, it's an expenses tracker app, and we can add income and expenses, so we can keep track of our expenses. And what we are going to be adding to this current application is when we're going to be adding routing. So we're going to have different routes for Svelte, and we're also going to have authentication in the front end and also in the backend. We're going to protect our routes. So the main route right now is the home screen, and this is open for everyone. And right here we can create a new account. So if I click here, now I am in the sign up page where I can create a new user. I will give it a name, and I also can give it a password. And once I create this user, now we are in the same screen that we had before, but we have a couple of things more. So we have this link that we can click here and change our password, and this will have some validation. So if we enter a wrong password, it will fail. So we have this error here because we enter a wrong password, and we can change our password here. So another feature is that now every item is attached to every account. So this user has these expenses. We're going to create a relationship between users and transactions. So every user has their own transaction, and right here we can log out. So I'm going to create a new account, and if I've used the same username, we're also going to have an error because this username was already taken. So we have also that validation, and I can create a new user, and this user has a different set of transactions because every transaction is attached to every user. So those are the main features. We also have validation in the login screen. So of course, if we enter wrong data, we're going to have these errors, and every time we type, the errors disappear. So those are the main features. And now let's start with application. If you're new to this series, we need to set up some things before starting. The first thing is that we need to set up MongoDB, and for doing that we're going to use this service called Mongo Atlas. So you first need to create an account. It's free. They have a free tier, and once you sign up for the account, you're going to have this dashboard. You first need to create a cluster, and then you're going to select the free version of the cluster. And once you have that, you also want to make sure that you have a user. So you need to create a user that can connect to the database, and also you need to give access to which IP address is going to access your cluster. So in this case, I'm using this IP address that is going to include all the IP addresses from the internet. So it's just for development. In production, you want to point to your server here, and once you have that, then here you're going to click in the connect button, and here you're going to check for this that says connect your application. And here we have a URL. So this URL, you want to make sure that you replace the password that you created for that user, and also the TV name. In my case, I will call this database by the name of test, and this is what you need to get started. So make sure to copy this URL with the correct credentials. So once you have that, you're gonna go to the initial code if you're just starting with this project. So I will share the link in the description about the initial code, and it's going to be in the master branch, the initial code. So this is the code of the previous tutorial, and here you want to clone that repository, and then you can get started. So I'm going to clone that in my system, the repository, and then I can cd into that project, and I'm going to install all the dependencies. So once you have that, you also want to make sure here we have a folder for the client, and here we also have another set of dependencies that we want to install. So I'm going to cd into the client, and I'm going to install the dependencies here. Once everything is installed, make sure to cd back to the root of this project. So we are now in the root of the project. Now I'm going to open this project with VS Code. Okay, now that I am in the project, I'm going to go to this config file. So here's where you can see that I have the Mongo URL that I mentioned before. So it's taking this from an environment variable. So if you want to do this way, you can also have this in a string, but I advise you that you have this in an environment variable, because you don't want to check this into your code. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the URL that I showed you before, and I'm going to store this in an environment variable. So export mongo URI equals, and here is the URL that I have for my database. So it has my password, and also has the name of the database that I want to create. So you want to store that, and now this will only be available in this terminal session. So maybe you can also want to store this in your bash profile if you prefer. And now that I have that, so here I have a set of scripts. So the script that we want to run is this dev script, and this script is going to run the server and the client at the same time. So it's going to now run the backend and the Svelte client. So we're going to give it a shot to make sure that everything was configured correctly. So I'm going to run npm run dev, and this will kick the server and the backend at the same time. So now I can open this URL. I already have that here, so I'm going to refresh this, and it should give me the initial code. So this is the exact same application that we had before, and we can make sure that this is being stored in the database. So it's looking correctly, and we have our previous code. So now we're going to move to the new part of the project. We're going to first start with the backend, and the package that we are going to use for authentication is this one called Passport. So I think it's the most popular open source tool or package for authentication. And the nice thing about this is that it has a ton of strategies. So each strategy is a way of authenticate your app. So you can try to use Facebook authentication, or you can use JWT. So or Auth directly. There's a ton of strategies that you can choose, but the one that we are going to use, because we want to keep this tutorial simple, is the local strategy. So this is the one that we are going to use. And what this is that it allows us a way to authenticate by username and password. So we are only going to use that, and we are going to store this in MongoDB. And we're also going to use the session of the user. So for knowing if the user is logging. So this is what we are going to be using, this strategy. But actually what is going to help us a lot is this plugin for MongoDB called Passport Local Mongoose for Mongoose. So this is a plugin that simplifies the building of all of this boilerplate for password. So we're still using password, but this is just a plugin that has a ton of features that it makes really easy to configure the local strategy in our application. So this is what we're going to be using. So now let's move to the code to install what we need. So I'm going to open a new terminal tab here, and I'm going to install the dependencies that I need. So we're going to start with Passport Local Mongoose. So this is the package that I mentioned before. That is a plugin for Mongoose, and I'm going to install this first, and then I'm going to install Passport. So this package already has Passport, but we just want to make sure that we have that also. So we're going to install Passport. So this is the main package that authenticates everything. So now we have Passport, and now we're going to install this package called Express Session. So this used to be directly into Express, but now they split that all the packages in different ones. So we need to install this Express Session that is going to handle the sessions for us. And we also going to install this connect Mongo. So this will allow us to connect our sessions to MongoDB, that I'm going to explain that in a minute. So once we have all the dependencies, I'm going to start with the model. So if we go here, we have this model that is from Mongoose, is for the transactions. And now I'm going to create a new one that's going to be for the users. So we have here our new module, and here I'm going to use the package that I'm going to first require Mongoose. And then I'm going to use the schema that's from Mongoose. So we are going to use the schema, and then I'm going to require the library that we install. That's Passport Local Mongoose, and this is coming from what we just installed, Passport Local Mongoose. So this is the plugin. So now we only need to declare the user module, and we can do this by creating a new schema. And here we're not going to add any properties, because the plugin will take care of adding the username, and also the plugin does not store the password as plain text, because that's a really bad idea. So what's going to do is going to create a hash and a encryptions. So this is not going to be in plain text, so it's secure. So we you can actually add new properties here, like, I don't know, name or something like that, if you want to add more properties to your user. But for now, we're just going to use the username and the password. And then we need to add the plugin. So we are going to, this is how we use the plugin. And actually this can have a bunch of options. So we are not going to pass any options here. So you can have different kind of encryption keys, and you can also have like a password. So makes sure that your password is strong, but we're not going to do this for the tutorial. And now we can export the model model and we first need to give it a name. So this is the name that's going to have in MongoDB. And then we need to pass the schema. So the schema is the user object that we create. So now we have declared the schema for the user. Now that we have our schema, let's move on to the service.js file. And here is where we are going to make use of all the passport configuration that we need. So I'm going to first require everything that we need. So we first are going to require passport. Then we also going to require this session express session that we installed before. And we are going to create a new Mongo store that's going to be requiring the package that we install. And here we need to connect to the session. So we have that. And now let's start using what we added. So we first need to use the session. So we need to configure the session, and here this needs an object with all the options that we are going to define. So the first one is going to be resave. So this is going to make sure that even we have the same session from the browser, we're going to save that again to make sure that is the same session. And we're also going to have this as true, this property. Then we need a secret. So the secret, this is going to be used to sign the cookie session, and this needs to be a string, and it can be anything. And you could probably add this to the config file to make sure that you have that in your environment variable. But for now, I'm just going to have the secret like this here. We have the secret, and finally we need to define a store. So the default store is the memory. So you can use the memory of the server, but the problem with this is that the memory is limited. So it depends on the server that you want. So if you have a bunch of users, it's not going to be able to handle all of the users. It's not going to scale. So you need to buy more memory. And another, so this is why we're going to use Mongo for this. So the sessions are going to be stored in the database, and we do this by creating a new instance of the Mongo store. And here we need to add this mongoose connection, and we can just pass the mongoose that connect that we have from mongoose that connection. So this is how we configure the session. So to store every cookie that's coming from the browser. Now we need to set up passport. So we're going to first create the strategy. So this is how password is going to handle the authentication. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be using passport local, but because we're using the plugin, we can use the model directly, and we have some nice methods there that are going to configure that. So I'm going to first require the model that we have in the models folder, and here we have the user model, and this user model has this method that we can use that's going to be create strategy. So this is going to handle everything for us. It's going to, because this needs to have some way of know how to get the user and how to make sure it's the correct user. So this method is going to take care of that. Then we need to serialize the user, and again we're going to use the user object. This user model only has these methods because we added the plugin. By default, the user object does not have these methods, so it has the serialize user method. And we also need to add a way of deserialize the user, and again we are going to use the methods from the model. And finally, we need to use in our application all of this passport stuff. So we are going to first initialize passport, and then we are going to use the session from passport. So this is all the configuration that we need to get started with passport. Okay, before moving on, we have a typo here. So it's not app.user, it's app.use. And now we are going to add some rows for the users. So I'm going to call this, in the rows folder, I'm going to create a file called Auth. So these are going to be the Auth rows. And here I'm going to first from Express, I'm going to require the router. So we have a router, and I'm also going to require passport because I'm going to use passport here. And I'm also going to require the user model that we created before. So I'm going to, from the models folder, I'm going to require the user. Now I'm going to declare our router. like this. And I will start with a get endpoint that's going to be for the user path. So we are going to search for the user like this, and here we have the our midget wall that we're going to receive the request, and we're going to send a response. And here I'm going to say if request that user. So what the passport does is it is attached a user object to the request. So that's how we know if we have a user, we're going to send a JSON with the user itself, and here we are going to return the request that username, and I need that. And if we don't have a user, we are going to return a JSON object that has a user of null. So this is not going to fail, it's just going to return a null for the user. And we are going to export the router so we can use it from outside. So this is the first route that I want, and I'm going back to the server file, and here I'm going to use that router. So I'm going to say auth routes equals require, and we are going to require from the routes folder. I'm going to require the auth routes, and I can use the routes here. So it's going to say API auth, the route for these routes, and I am going to pass the routes from auth. I'm going to change the name of this auth routes, and I'm going to see if everything is working correctly, so nothing crashed. And for testing this, I'm going to use this tool called Insomnia. So this is a tool for debugging APIs. You could also use Postman if you're more familiar with that, but for this I'm going to use Insomnia. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the localhost 3000. That's where we have our server. I'm going to access the API, and here I'm going to call the auth route that we created, and here I'm going to try to get the user. So I'm using a get method for this, and I should have an object that says null. So yeah, we have that. So that's working correctly because we are not authenticated. So we have this response as we expected. So that now that we have that, I'm going to go back to the auth routes, and I'm going to add a new route for creating a new user. So here I'm going to say router.post, and the route for this is going to be SignUp. This is going to be the route, and here we are going to pass an async function as the second middleware that has the request, the response, and our next function tick for this middleware. So we're going to say from the request that body, we are going to extract. So when we're going to pass in this, we're going to pass the username and also the the password. So this is coming from the body of the request. And now we are going to try to register the user. So we're going to await to user, and in here we have a couple of methods that we have because we're using the plugin. So it's really convenient that we have this plugin. So we have this register method that's going to try to create a new user. So the first argument is going to be an object that has all the information about the user. So we only have the username, but we could also have like email, or if we have that in our module, but we don't have that. And as the second parameter, we're going to pass the password. Oh, this is wrong. This is not passport. This is password. And we're going to pass that. So this is going to make sure that we have everything handled correctly. So this is going to make the hash and it's going to encrypt the password. And once we have that, we are going to check for some errors, because as you remember, we want to make sure that if we only have unique usernames, so the username is not duplicated. So if the error that name, and these errors come from the plugin that we added, if error that name equals user exists error, so this is the error that we're going to check, we're going to return the res data status. So we need to return because we don't want to keep this function to keep running. So we are going to return the an status of 400. That means that this was a bad request, and we're going to send a JSON that's going to have a message that's going to say what's the reason that we are rejecting this request. I need to add, I think I need to add this here. And so if this is the case, we're going to send this message. Otherwise, if that's not the case, because we're still in the catch block, we are going to return an status, because we can still have a different error. So this is going to be a 500 error. That means that something bad went with the server. So you can say there was an error. This is going to be the message when signing up the user. So we are now registering the user, and after that we're going to call the next function. So it's going to look for the next middleware. And here, because we are just creating the user, we also want to authenticate the user. Here there's something wrong here. We need to use the password here. So we need to use the password here and make sure to correct that. And we are just only creating the user, but we also need to authenticate the user right away. So for that, we are going to use another middleware, and this is going to authenticate the user. And we can just use the passport that authenticate method. And here we need to pass the strategy as a string. So the strategy that we are using is the local strategy. And this second middleware is going to authenticate the user after it was created. So we're first creating the user with username and password with the user model that we created with the plugin. And after that, we're calling the next function that's going to authenticate that user. And after that, if everything was correct, we are going to add another function here that's going to have the request and the response. And this function what's going to do is going to res that send. We're going to send some JSON, and here we're going to send the user as we have it before. So we are just sending the user as with the username. Actually, I don't like that because we're only sending the username. So I'm going to change this to an object that's going to have username equals this. So we have an object here that's going to return the username in the user object, and I also want to have that here. So we are sending back the user. We know which user was signing up. And because we are authenticating first, we are going to have that user in the request. So now I have the route. I am registering the user first, then I am authenticating the user with a local strategy, and after that I'm sending back the user. So this is going to create a user. So now let's test to see if that is working. So I'm going to say auth.sign up. This is the route, and I'm going to change the method. We need a post method, and here I'm going to send some JSON, and we need the username. I'm going to say that's test, and we need so make sure that this is valid JSON, and here I'm going to pass the password. And this is just going to be a really bad password. For now, it's going to be 1234. So this is a really bad password. And after that, I can send this request. Let's go ahead, and there we have created that user. So now if I try to create another user with the same username, we should get an error because it was already created. So let's try that. So I'm going to send this request again, and then we have a bad request because the user already exists. So we have that, and because we are already authenticated, I can actually try to get the user here. So I can say get user, and this is it's not going to have anybody. So I'm going to query for the user, and there we have, because I am already authenticated, and I have, because the Insomnia also has the ability to handle sessions. We are authenticated in the server. So we have that, and now I'm going to add a new endpoint so we can log out. So this endpoint is going to also be a post request. So we can say router.post, and this is going to use the logout path. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the request and the response here, and I am going to say if we have the request that user, because it is possible that someone is trying to access this without being logged in, we are only going to log out if we have a user authenticated. So also, again, we have another method from password that is attached to the request object as request.logout, and this is how we log out. We just use that, and after that we can say rest.json, and here we can say message logged out. So it was successful, so that's where we send in that. So if we don't have the user, we can just say rest.json we can just say, send a message that's going to say no user to log out. So we now we should be able to log out. So let's test this. So if I'm going to try to log out, and remember this is a post request, I should have a successful message. Okay, we are now logged out. And if I try to log out again, we have this message because we just log out. And if I try to get a user, I should have a null object because we are not authenticated. So we have a way of log out, but now we need a way to log into the server. So I'm going to add a new route to our router. That's going to say route that post, and this is going to point to login. So this is going to be the login route. And what we need to do here is really simple. We just need to use the passport that authenticate me to. So we only need to do that. And this is going to take care to make sure that the username and the password is correct. And after that, this is going to throw an error. If we're going to see that in a second, but if we send incorrect credentials, going to throw an error. And if everything is correct, we're going to invoke this other function that's going to have a request and a rest. And here what we are going to say is we're just going to send a JSON of the user like before. So we're kind of repeating ourselves every time. Here you can see that I am using the same code over and over again. So now I will create a new function that's going to be called extract user. We are going to read that from the request, and we are going to return from the request that user. We are going to use the username. And actually, I also want to have another property that's the ID. So this is the ID of the user, and I want to use this in the future. But for now, let's keep it like that. And we are going to return an object that has the user name and the ID. And here I can just use this function, so extract user, and we can pass the request. So this is going to do, we are not repeating ourselves all the time. Actually, I can simplify this more. So we are going to have an object that has the user property and that has this right here. So we have everything here. And I can just say use this here. We're going to use the function, and we're going to pass the request. And I'm going to do the same here. And I'm also going to do the same here. So we don't repeat ourselves every time. And we also have our function. So now let's test that login route. So now we're going to use the login route, and we need to use a post post request for this, and I can use the JSON that we have before. So let's try first to see if it throws an error if we have a different password. So I'm going to modify so this is a different password. We should have an error. Yeah, there we have an unauthorized error because we passed the wrong password. And if we send the right password, we should now have the user, and we also have the ID, and now we are authenticated. So let's test this again to see if this keeps working. So we are just getting the user because we are authenticated. And finally, to have all the roles that we need, we also, as you remember in the demo, we have a way to update the password. So we are going to do that as well. So I'm going to add a new router that post, and this is going to be update password. And here I'm going to so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that the user is authenticated, because if we don't have any user, we don't have any user authenticated, we don't have anyone to change their password. So we're going to say if not rec that user. So if we don't have the user, we're going to send a message that says no user to change the password. So this is if we don't have a user. Otherwise, we're just going to move on to the next function in the middleware. So here is where we are going to change the password. So we are going to use an async function for this, and I'm going to have a request and a response. And what we are going to do here is that this is going to have two properties that are coming from the request, that body, and this is going to be, of course, we need the old password, and we need the new password. So this is coming from the request. We're going to add some validation here. So if the request does not have the old password, or it does not have the new password, so we are making these properties required, we are going to return address that status. So this is going to have a status of 400. It's a bad request, and the JSON here is going to be message invalid request. So we're just making sure that we are having the password and the new password. Well, we can also make sure that these are strings, but the next function would take care of that. And now we're going, the method is going to make sure that these are strings. So now that we have that, we're going to try catch. We're going to try to change the password. So we first need to make sure that we have the user in the database. So we are going to use the user object to find by ID, and we are going to set the request that user that ID. So, and we are awaiting this So we are awaiting for the user. We're getting that from the database. And then we can await to user that change. So this is another function that we have from the plugin, and it's going to take care to change the password for us. So user that change password, and we are going to first send the old password and then the new password. So this is going to make sure that the old password is correct, and then it's going to change that to the new password. And if everything went correct, we're going to send some JSON that says, it only says success. So that's the happy path. But what happens if we have some errors? So we need to handle those errors. So the first error that we can have is that the user sent an incorrect old password. So they sent the first password is wrong. So we're going to check the name of the error, and this is another thing that the Mongoose plugin provides, is that we can check if the name of the error is this error name. So is incorrect password error is the name of the error, and if that's the case, we're going to return. So we need to return restart status or 400, because this is also bad request, and we are going to send a JSON object with a message so they know the reason. So the reason is going to be the same message that we have here, and this is only if that was the case. And we can also have different errors, but these errors, this is going to be a 500 error because this is from the server, and we can say send a message that says there was an error. So this is a generic error that we could have. So this should take care of updating the password. We're first making sure that we have a user authenticated, and if we have the user, we are going to make sure that we have the password from the request. We're going to make sure that we have the correct alt password, and then we're going to send the success message. So now let's test this in Insomnia. So we are already authenticated, as you can see. Our password is 1234. So we want to make use of that row that we created, and this is, if I remember, is update password. This is the row that we need. So we have the row here, and here we need to send the old password. So we first are going to, and we need to make this a post request. We're going to test if we don't send all the parameters. So we should have an error of invalid request because we are not sending all the parameters. And then we can send both requests. And here we also are going to have an error because this is not the correct old password. And I think this is uppercase. Yep, this is uppercase. So, and now we have an incorrect password error because this is not the correct password. But we can change this to the correct password, 1234. And now we should be able to change the password. So the password was changed. And that's all the roads that we need for authentication. So just one side note. So we're going to check how this was stored in our database. So we are now in the dashboard or Mongo Atlas, and if we go to our collections, we are going to see that we have the session from Insomnia. So this is how the session is being stored, and here we also have the users, and we only have one user, but as you can see, we are not storing the password as plain text. We are having this salt and this hash that's going to make sure that this is secure. So we have created our routes for authentication, but actually our routes of our application are still unprotected. So if I want to, for example, I will first log out. So I'm now logged out, and if I try to go to, if you remember, we have these transactions endpoint that is going to give me all the transactions in that I have for the expenses, and you can see that we are not authenticated, and we can still see this. So we want to protect this. So for doing that, this is actually it's really simple. So let me show how we can do that. So we have our routes here, and what I'm going to add here is I'm going to add a middleware. So this is going to be called ensure login. So it's going to make sure that the user is logged in. So we are going to take the request, the response, and the next parameters here, and we can say if the, and we have this helper, and is also is coming from the request object. So we have this is authenticated. So this is will give us a boolean. So if the user is authenticated, if it's not authenticated, actually, if it's not authenticated, we are going to return res status, and here we're going to say 4 or 1. That stands for not authenticated, and we are going to send back a response with a message that's going to say not authenticated. So this is the case if the user is not authenticated, but otherwise we're just going to pass to the next middleware. So this is our function, but we need to use that in our endpoint. So I'm first going to add this to this endpoint, and I'm going just pass that as here like this. So I'm just passing that function that, and it's going to make sure that we are authenticated. So now we can test. There's an error here, so you can see that this is not coming from the response. This is coming from the request. So we're making sure that we are authenticated from the request. And now let me remove this. If we are trying to access this endpoint, we should have an error. There we have it, because we're not authenticated. So if I'm trying to log in, so this is JSON, and I'm going to try. I'm going to log in with the login endpoint, and this is a post request, and here we have a username and password. The username is test, and the password is this one. So now we're logging into the system. So now if I try to access that endpoint transactions. Now we should be able to see everything, and we can see everything because we are now authenticated. So we can add this to all the requests. We just need to add this middleware to also to the post request. We want to make sure that the user is authenticated. We also want to make sure that the user is authenticated when deleting. And I think that's all for this. Now, as you remember, I mentioned that we want to have a relationship between the users and the transactions. So first, I'm going to delete this transaction. So for deleting, I can just do this. I want to delete this because this does not have the correct schema that I am going to use. So I can pass this, and this should delete. So we deleted that, and if we have an empty array. That's correct. That's what I want. And here what I want to do is I will modify. I'm going to modify this model. So we have the value and a date. That's the default is the now value. And I'm going to add a new property that's going to be called user ID. And it's going to be type of string. And the default is not the default. And this is going to be required. So required true. So we are adding this new property to the transaction schema. And this is not going to be coming from the request. We are going to add that. So how we are going to add that? Let me go back here. So every time we post, we have the value, the date, and here we are just going to add a new property. So because we're making sure that the user is logged in, we know that we have the request that user object. So we're just going to say user ID is the request that user that /ID. So this is how we are making sure that, and this is from the user, and that's how we are adding that. And we are posting that, but we also need to change this here because we only want to make sure that when the user accesses this endpoint, is going to be able to only find his own transactions. So for doing this, we are still going to use this find method, but here we can pass an object that's going to have what actually we're going to find. So we're going to find the user ID that match the request that user that ID. So this is going to make sure that we are having only the transactions that match the user ID. And here, because this is like a query, we need to add this method that's called exec. So now we have only the transactions we will have only the transactions for the current user when they logged in. And we're adding that, so we can now test. So we need to pass the value. Okay. And we can test that now. We're going to send a post request, and that's going to have a value. And I believe this is a number 12. send, and you can see that we have the user ID. And if we try to get all the transactions, with no body, we have all the transactions for this user. Security hole here, and you feel free to pause the video and try to figure it out. What is the security hole that we have? So you can try to guess now, and also I can give you a hint. So the hole that we have is in the delete method, and you can try to find the issue that we have. But now let me show what's the problem. And the problem is that we're making sure that the user is able to the user is logged in the system, but they can pass any ID here, right? So if they pass any ID, we want to make sure that this transaction belongs to this user. So this means that we only are requiring that the user has access to is logged in, but we are not making sure that this transaction belongs to this user. So it's possible that another user will try to delete a transaction for a different user. So we can fix that pretty easily. So we can say the following. So we are querying the transaction, and from the previous code, this is a bug that I fixed. So in the previous code, we weren't awaiting this. So you need to await the transaction, and we can say the following. So we can just say if the transaction that, so remember that we have this user ID. We have this user ID here. That's from the object, and we are using the ID from the request for getting that. So if the user ID from the transaction is different, and here I'm going to use the string constructor here, because actually the request that user that ID is not a string, but we are making that a string so we can compare both of these. So we are comparing the user ID from the transaction from the user ID that's logged in. So if this is not the same, so what we are going to do is we're going just to stop the execution of this function with a return statement, and here we are going to send a status. So the user is not authorized to make this. So we are going to say 4 or 3, and we are going to send the message of unauthorized. So this will make sure that the user ID and from the transaction and the user ID from the request are the same. So we know that these transactions belong to that user. So I think that's all that we need for the backend for the authentication to work. And now let's move on to the frontend. And the first thing that I want to add here is we need a router. We need routing, because we are going to have different routes for login, for logout, for sign up to the application. So for Svelte, we have a couple of options. We have this new awesome tool called Routify, but what we are going to use is this library called Svelte SPA Router, And I want to use this because this is really simple approach, and it has his pros and his cons. So the pros is that this is simply really simple use. You don't need internal server or something like that to make it work. And I really like the API that they share. And the main drawback is that it is not good for SEO, so it's only made for the main focus is for single page applications, and that's that we have what we have. So we only have a simple page application, and that's why we are going to use this tool. And another thing about this router is that it uses hash based routing. What this means is that we have this hash in every route, and before the page. So this is how it can store the story of every route. So now let's install these packages. So we are going to copy this. I'm going to open the terminal, and I'm going to switch to a different tab, because the first tab is running our server and the backend and the frontend at the same time. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd into the client folder. Remember that we have a client folder here, and here I'm going to npm install, and I'm going to install that router. So now that we have installed that, let's start changing some things here. I'm going to close all of this that we are not going to use for now. And here what I'm going to change, well, first I'm going to add a new folder that's going to be called pages. So this is where we are going to have all the pages. And here I'm going to create a new file that's going to be called dashboard.svelte. So we have that file, and here's where we are going to have our current application. So we are going to move the code, and we are going to have it here. And here I'm also going to have a new home that is built. So this is going to be the home page that we don't need authentication. This is going to be the starting point, and this is going to be our application. So now let's go here, and I'm going to have a modification here. So in the previous application we have this max width property, so that's why it looks like this. But now I'm going to remove this, and it's going to be like this. So we can see now that we have some error here, and that's because we are not this is not getting all the transactions, and this is because we are not authenticated. So we are going to fix that soon. And now let's start by moving this to the correct file. So I'm going to have all of this in the dashboard file, and here I'm going to make sure that I have the correct paths here, because this is one level up, and also the stores are coming from one level up, and I've moved that. And now I'm going to remove all of this code here like this. And here I'm going to start from scratch. So here I'm going to first import router from the package that we just created. That's It's called Svelte SPA router. So this is the package, and I'm going to make use of that. So this is a component actually. So I'm going to use that component right here. So I can say router. If we say we don't have any here because we haven't declared any routes here. So I have this home page here, and for now I'm just going to say add something like this so we know that we are in the home page. And how this router works is that we need to define some routes here. So I can say routes equals, and here we are going to have an object that has all the routes for our application, and this is going to be the main path. And here, when we are in this route, we are going to display the home component that we have in the pages folder. So if we go here, we're going to import the pages and the home that spelled component, and here as the value of this we can just use the home. So we are declaring the roads, but we need to use the roads in here, so we can pass this as a property, and we can say routes. And now we can see that we are in the home, and we are going to add another route. That's going to be, this one's going to be dashboard. So this is going to be the route for our application, and here we are going to import dashboard from pages / dashboard.svelte, and here we are going to pass the dashboard. So we have for these routes. Now let's see if we can access the dashboard. So as you remember, we have to use the hash like this, and I think we have an error here. So let's take a look. What's the error here? It says module can resolve pages / dashboard.svelte. So let me take a look. Here we have, we have the path was wrong. So now we have the dashboard, but still failing because we are not authenticated. So we have both roads here. And let's start with the home. So if you remember, we have this nice home hero. So that's what I'm going to create now. So we are going for this application we were using Bulma CSS. So Bulma is a CSS framework that has a bunch of classes that we can use, and this is what we are going to use now. So we can say this is going to be our section, and this is going to have a class of hero, and we can add this class that's going to give some color, and this is going to say that is full height, width, Navbar. So this is the Bulma CSS class that we can use for make it full weight, full height. Now we can add this other class that's called hero body, and here we are going to have a container. So I'm using Emmet for having this, and here we are going to have a p, and actually it's going to be h2 that title, and we are going to have this message that's going to say Spencer's tracking make easy or slogan. And here so let's take a look of how this is working out. So we have that, it's looking good, and we have the space for our navbar. And now I'm going to add a button that's going to allow us to create a new account. So it's going to be an A tag that has the button class that has the is primary and is liked. So these are all Bulma CSS class. The href is going to be, and we need to use the hash. Remember that we need to use the hash. It's going to be the sign up page that it doesn't exist yet. We're going to create that in a minute. And here we are going to have this get starter message. So this is just a start. So we have this button that goes to sign up, and we don't have anything here yet. So let's create that. And this is where we are going to create our accounts. So I'm going to create a new file here called signup.svelte. And here is where we are going to have all the markup for signing up. So let's start with the HTML. So here we are going to have a container. And here we are going to have a section. And here we are going to have an h1 tag that's going to have the class of title, and it's going to say sign up. We can take a look. So actually, if we go to the sign up page, we still can't see anything, and that's because we haven't declared a route here. So let's do that. We are going to import sign up from, and we are going to go to the pages folder, and here we are going to use this component, and we need to pass that here. Sign up. This is the route, and we need to pass the component. So now this should work. Yep. And we can see that we have the start of our markup. We have the title, and now I'm going to add inside here, I'm going to add a HR, so we have a line there, and I'm going to start with a form. So this is going to be a form, and here I don't want to have an action. I just want the form, and let's start with this username. So again, with the help of Bulma CSS classes, we are going to have this field div that's going to have a label. with the class label. We don't need this for. And here we are going to have the username. So we have the field username, and here we need the input itself. And for this, I'm going to use the control class from Bulma. And inside here, I'm going to have an input with the class input. We have the input, and this is going to be required. And I think that's all for now. We have the input, and this is where we are going to have the username. And here we're going to have another field. So I can just copy this. Now I can just copy this and I can give it the name of password. And this is going to be the type of password. So we have the username and the password. And what we now need is the submit button. And this is just going to be a control. We have a control class, and it's going to be a button. Well, it's not going to be a button. It's going to be an input with the class of button, and it's going to be the type submit. And the value is going to be submit. And here we are going to add another class that's going to be info and is light. So we have our form. Okay, so let's move on to Svelte. So in Svelte, we can declare the script tag, and we need a way to keep track of the username. So we are going to declare a variable here that's called username, and another for the password. So this is where we are going to store this, and here we can just bind the value of the username. We're going to bind the value here, and the value of the password is going to be here. So we are binding that, and now we need to sign up, to have a method for signing up. And for doing that, I'm going to import Axios from Axios. We're going to be using Axios for making the requests, and here I'm going to have an async function that is going to be called SignUp, and here's where we are going to sign up. We are going to have a try catch block, and what we are going to try first is we're going to get the user from where we're going to await Axios.post, and here we don't need to use the localhost URL because we set up a proxy. in the previous video, we have here we have a proxy that every time we target the API route is going to go back, and this is just for development. It's going to point to this localhost that is where our server is running. So we are going to point to API that auth that sign up. So this is where we are going to be pointing, and what we are going to pass. And the second parameter here is an object, and it's going to have the username, and also it's going to have the password. So this is what we are going to try, and here we are going to have a response that has, we are going to deconstruct the data from the response. And if you remember, from this data we have the user. So now I want to every time we open the app, I want to store the user, so we can, in the store, so we can use the user everywhere and make some validations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open the stores. So this is where we have all the stores for our application, and here I'm going to declare a new store that is going to be called user. So this is the user object, and it's going to be a writable store, and the initial value will be null, so we don't have a user at the beginning, so the initial value is null. And going back here to the sign up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first import from the stores. I'm going to import the user store, and I'm going to use the $sign to assign a new value to that store, and it's going to be the data that user. So this is coming from the API, the user. So once we sign up with username and password, we are going to assign the user from the server. And one last thing that I want to do here is that once everything is done, I'm going to push the navigation to a different route, so I can import from Svelte SPA router. They have some functions that we can use. So the function that I want is called push, and this is going to push to the router a different route. So once we sign up, I'm going to push the URL to the dashboard route. So once we sign up, we are going to see the expenses page. And if we have an error, we are going to handle this error to the user. So first I'm going to create a new variable that's going to be called error message. And what I'm going to do here is if the error that response, so this is from Axios, they provide a response object, and we have a data here, and if you remember, we are sending back a message. So what I want to handle this is the case if the user already exists. So if we have the message is the message that we had in the backend, if you remember, it's this one. If the message is that, we are going to set back the username to an empty string and also the password, where we are setting back that to the defaults, and we are going to have an error message is going to be, or error message is going to be username is already taken, and this is going to be the message. So we have everything. And well, we are declaring the the error message, but we are not using it here. So what we can do here is just we have a class in every input that's called, and we can bind that class using the directive from Svelte. That is like this. So we can say class is danger, so it's going to turn red, and this is going to be, we are going to have this class if we have an error message. Only if we have that, we are going to have this class, and at the beginning is going to be, it is not going to have that class. We can check by changing this like this, and there we have the class. And that's because at the beginning this error message is undefined, and we are also going to do the same for the username. Well, we only need this and the username actually. We don't need this error in the password. So we have that, and we also want to add, here we are going to have this message because the red color is not sufficient enough to tell what's going on. So if we have the error message and we're using the Svelte blocks, logic blocks for this, if we have the error message, we are going to have a P tag that has the help class, and that has the is danger class. It's going to turn this to red, and inside here we are going to have the error message. So we are using that. We can see that this like we are using that, and now we need to submit this form. So for doing that, we can use this Svelte event listeners. So we can use on submit. So this is going to be triggered when this form is submit, and we want to add a modifier to this event listener. And why is that? Is because we want to prevent the default, because the default is to reload the screen, and we don't want to do that. So for doing that, we can do this like this. We add a pipe there, and we can say prevent default, and the method that's going to handle this submit action event is going to be our SignUp method. So let me pass this here, and now we should be able. So the first thing that I want to test is as before, is the error case. As you remember, we have a test user already. So if we should be able to see the error, because we are trying to sign up this test user that already exists. So we are not seeing anything. Let's see what's the issue here. So we have the sign up. So the problem here, I think, is that this is wrong. I think the route that we declare is sign up. Let me check. So if we go back here, we can see the route. Yeah, it has a dash. So the route is sign up like that. So let me check again. Hopefully now it's successful. So and we should, yeah, we have the error there. And you can see that we have the username is already taking error. And then there's an issue here. So is when I start typing, this still shows red. So we want to remove that. And for doing that is we just can do the following. So we can use these reactive properties of Svelte. So we can say if username. So if we have again a username, we are going to set the error message to null. So we are not going to have an error message. So let me test that. We are going to have the error again, and once we start typing, that's gone because now that is no longer undefined. So I'm going to create a new user to see if the other case is working. So the other case is we are going to assign that user to the store, and we are going to push the navigation to the dashboard. So let me see if that's working. So the user is going to be called Pedro and the password is going to be our very strong password. We can now submit and we should be able to see the dashboard. And now we don't have any error because we are authenticated. We can actually start adding new transactions here, and it's showing in the UI. Now I would like to add a logout button because we're inside the app, but we cannot log out. So for doing that, I'm going to add the Navbar, and here is where we are going to have our logout button. So let me go back to the code, and I'm going to create a new component, and this component is going to be called Navbar. That's spelled. So we have the component, and I'm going to start adding the markup. So here again, I'm going to be using Bulma CSS classes, and I'm going to use the nav tag. This is going to have the navbar class, and this is going to have is info class, and there we have our initial navbar. And here I'm going to add a container, and here this container is going to first have this navbar brand. So this is going to be where we have our logo. So we're going to have a nice logo here, and here I'm going to have an a tag that's going to have the class of navbar item. So this is going to be an item, and the reference that this is the href that this is going to have is we have the ref here, and it's going to give us take us to the home of our application. And well, this is also going to have the title property, the title class, and our logo is going to be this nice emoji. So this is the logo of our application, and we can take a quick look of how right now it doesn't show up because we have I'm going to add that to our app.spell, and this is not, of course, not going to be a road. It's going to be present all the times. So we are going to import navbar from pages. No, this is not from pages, this is for components slash navbar.svelte. So this is the navbar, and here I'm going to add the navbar, and we should have our navbar. So we have the navbar with our nice logo, and we can keep moving. The next thing is I'm going to have the buttons here. So I'm going to add this into our navbar, and this is going to have the class of navbar menu. This is going to be the menu, and here I'm going to add a navbar and here I'm going to have this button that's going to have the class of button, and it is going to say log out, and we should now see that in the UI. So it's not looking correctly because we have to add another div that has the navbar item. So this is going to hopefully it shows correctly now. So it's an item, and here I'm going to add another class that's going to be called buttons, because we're going to have two buttons here. For now we only have one, but we will add another, and we still have the same. So this looks good on this screen, but probably you can see that it doesn't show up in when we stretch these to mobile devices. So we're going to fix that. And well, another thing that I want to add here, well, that's all for showing this in mobile devices. I need to add in this section, I'm going to add a spam property. So this is going to be our hamburger icon, or however you want to call it. It's going to have a class of navbar burger. It's going to have the class of burger, and I think we only need this for now. And we are going inside here. We are going to have this three spam elements. we have that. We have our hamburger menu, but we need to add this property here, area hidden of true, and and this other property here, and this other property here. Okay, so we have that, but this is still not making anything, and that's because we have to handle this with a CSS class again, and this CSS class is called isActive. So this is going to tell when this is going to show up or not. And for controlling that, we're going to use the script tag, and we're going to declare a new variable here, isActive, an isActive variable. So we're going to say, and the initial value is going to be false. And here we are going to say, we're going to bind that CSS class like this, is active. This is the CSS class, and this is going to be true when the isActive property is true. And when this is going to be true, it's going to be true when we click in that menu. So we're going to use another event listener, and here I can have a callback that's going to target, it's going to say is going to change the isActive value to, is going to equals what the opposite of the current value of isActive. So we don't have anything yet, and when we toggle this, we can't see anything yet, but we can see that it changes, but we also need to have this here in our Navbar menu. So now this should work, and you can see that we have our logout button there. So we have fixed that, and now we actually need to log out from the application. For doing that, we are going to first import Axios from Axios, and this is the library that we are using to making HTTP requests to the server. And I'm going to declare a new function that's going to be called logout. And what this function is going to do is we're going to await for this API call that's going to be the post request that we are going to make into this endpoint that we declare. Is the endpoint is API Auth logout. This is the endpoint. We don't need to pass anything here, and that's basically it, but we need to do a couple of more things. The first thing is that I'm going to set the stores to the default values. So I'm going to import the user and the transactions stores from the stores folder and this is coming from stars from here. And the first I'm going to set the user to null, so we don't have a user now in our store. And then I'm going to set the transactions to the empty value. So we were doing this because if we log him back as a different user, we're going to have, we're just cleaning the store of the application for future users. And also once we are there, we're going to change the current location of the URL. So I'm going to import the from Svelte SPA router. I'm going to again use the push method. So it's going to push to the navigation. It's going to push to the home. So this is what it's going to do. And now we actually need to use this function, and what it should be is here. In here we are going to say on click. When we click here, we are going to use the logout function, and that should be it. Let's now test if see. So this now should give us the login screen, and it didn't work. So let's take a look why. If we click here, nothing is happening. So maybe I'm not using the correct button. So we have the function here, and we are targeting the on-click event to this function logout. Let me refresh this. We're still here, so let me try that again. Oh, now it works. That's weird. Okay, so you can see that we are logged out, but now if we are out of the application, this should be a login button. So let me change that. And how we can check this is by checking to the user object. So if we have a user and we are using this $sign from the store, if we have a user, because the initial value of the user is null, if we have that user, we are going to display this button. And otherwise we are going to have a different button, and this button is not going to be executed here. Actually, this is not going to be a button, it's going to be an A tag that has the class of button, and this is going to have an href, and this is going to move the navigation to the login screen that does not exist yet. And here we are going to have this message. So now it should look like this. So now we are able to log in. We're not able yet because we don't have anything here, but let's create that screen. So the screen that I need is going to be called login.svelte, and actually here I can just copy everything that I have in the sign up page because it's going to look kind of similar. So I'm going to paste this here, and this is going to be login. This is going login up login, and this is also going to have the username, but this is not going to have this error message here. The error message is going to be up here. And what else we need to change? We also want to have this danger class. We are also going to have this in the password field. So we have that there. We have this here, and the name of the function needs to change. So the function is called SignUp. This is no longer SignUp. This is login. And I need to change that here. And what else we need to change is this URL. So this is not a URL for logging in. The URL is just this one. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go back here and change that. It's still a post request, and the error here that we are going to check is not this one. We are going to check for the response that status. So if the status is 4 or 3, then we are going to set back these fields, and the error is going to be invalid credentials. So I think that's it. That's everything that we need to change. And of course, if we click here, we still cannot see anything because we need to add this to our routes here in the app.svelte file. So what I want to do is I'm going to call this login, and the component is going to be this login component that's coming from this login.svelte file. So I'm going to add this here, and now this should work. So if I click here, we have the login, and now let's give it a try. So if I try to use this Pedro username and I type a wrong password, it should give me an error. So we can see that something went wrong here. Unauthorized. The error that we need to check is not 401, is 4 or is not 403, is 401 here, 401. So let me try that again. So this should give me, yep. So there we have these invalid credentials message, and now when I type it goes away, but we still have an issue here because if I type here, the error will not go away, and that's because we also need to check here for the password. So if we have a username of password, we clean the error message. So now we should be able to clean that. So now I'm going to type the correct password. So the username is Pedro and the password is this one. And now we should be able to go inside the application. So now if you remember in the initial demo, we also have the feature that the user can change their own password and they can see their name here. So that's what we are going to add now. And well, displaying the name is going to be pretty easy. We just need to go to the Navbar, and here I'm going to add another button that's going to say button. It's going to have a class of button that is primary and also is live. And here, and this is going only to be shown if we have a user. So here we are going to have this nice emoji, and we are going to use the user from the store, and we are going to display the username. So that should give us the username. So we can't see the username, and we are seeing the login button. So if we have the user, we display these logout buttons. Let me go back here and see what's happening. So I'm going to log into the app, and we have, so probably something with the load, with the hot reload, but now we have our user here, and we can see our name, and we have the logout button. And now, well, this is not going to be a button. It's going to be an A tag, and where this is going to lead us is we are going to, when the user clicks here, is going to go to the, and remember to use the hash, the profile route. So this is what's going to happen. And I know what this is, this we're having this behavior, and maybe I can fix this now. So let me explain why we have this behavior. Is because when we are entering the app, it's going to trying to load the home, but because we have hot reload, is giving us the home, but also this component here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some guards here. So we need to add some guards in these rows. And what a guard is just a way of protect roads or redirect roads depending of certain conditions. So what we are going to use for that is we are going to use from the router we can import this wrap function, and this is going to help us to create these guards. So what we are going to say is so let me explain you what is happening. So even if we are, I'm going to go back to the home screen. So we are in the home screen, but we are logging into the application. And if we are here, we don't want to display this. We want the home to be our dashboard. So if we go here, this is going to be our home. So this is going to be our home, and once I log out from the application, you can see that I can still access this, but of course the backend is protecting us because we are not logging, but the user should not be able to see this if they are if they are not authenticated. So for fixing this is that we are going to have this wrap function, and what we are going to use, we are going to use a lifecycle hook from Svelte. So this hook is going to be the onMount hook that we are going to be using from Svelte. And this hook will be triggered when the DOM is rendered. So we can say onMount, we are going to run an asynchronous function, And what this function is going to do is going to make an API call so we need to know if we have a user or not. So we are going to also import Axios from Axios, and also we are going to import the user store from the stores. So what we are going to do here is going to say the data that's coming, we're going to await from Axios that get, and we just going to call the API /auth/user. So this is going to make an API to see if we have a user, and then we are going to declare that the store is going to came from the date that user, and remember that this is from the API that we created, that we have this property, and now we are knowing when we launch the app, we are knowing if we have a user. So another thing that I want to add here is, because this is going to take some time, I'm going to have a loading variable, loading, and the initial value is going to be false. And here I'm going to use, I already have a component that has a loading bar. So this is going to be loading from, I'm going to import that component from components/loading, that's Svelte. I am importing the component, and what I'm going to do is, once this is complete, loading is going to be, well, the initial value is going to be true, and I need to use the let keyword here. The initial value is going to be true, so we start with a true value, and once everything is loaded, we are going to have this as false. So we are controlling that, and now if it's loading, if it's not loading, if loading, we are going to display our loading component, loading, and otherwise we're going to use an else block. Otherwise we're going to display our application that has the navbar and the router. And well, here I would like to add some styles. So this is going to be our loading container, and here I'm going to add some styles, and I'm going to say loading container, and what I want to add here is it's going to have a max width of 500 pixels, and it's going to be displayed as flex, and it's going to have a min height of 100% of the viewport of the user. We are going to align the items to the center, and we are going to have a margin of out. So this is some styles that we are going to have for this, and we have that. So now every time it renders, we can see that we have the loading. It actually doesn't show because it's really fast, but we have that. And now we need to add the guards. So what these guards are going to do, we need to use the grab function, and this function takes first, it takes the component that we are going to render if this is successful. So we have the component, then it has some data that we can use to know what are the reasons why this failed. So I can say the reason for this is that it failed. The condition failed because it's already authenticated. And then the third parameter here is going to be the actual condition so a function, a callback that needs to return a boolean. So I'm going to add that function here, and the boolean is going to be if we don't have a user. So let me explain what's happening here. So because we are trying to access the home, if we do have a user, we are going to redirect the user to a different page because the user is already authenticated. So what we are doing is this is going to return, if we have a user, this is going to return false, and this is going to fail. And maybe if I add this function here, it would make more sense. So now I'm going to, so this is the dashboard component, and I'm going to use, of course, the dashboard route, and I'm going to use the dashboard component. And here the reason that we are going to reject this is because the user is not authenticated, it's unauthenticated. And the condition is going to be, so what this is going to do is only if this is true, then it's going to reach to this component. So because if the user is not out, and this is the reason what this didn't happen. So we are only going to show this dashboard route when we do have a user. So when this is true, because this will have some data, and the default, as you remember, is null. So when what we are doing is fetching from the user from the API, and if we do have a user here, then it will be able to access this dashboard route. So we want to do the same. For the sign up. So we are going to, if the user is already authenticated, and this will only render if this is true, we are going to show the sign up page. And the same here for the login, because these are public paths. So we have our guards, but now we need to actually redirect. And how we do this is with this router, is that we have this event listener that's called on condition fail, and we can pass that here. So we have this custom event that's on conditions failed. So when any of the conditions failed, we are going to invoke this function that's going to be called conditions failed. And this function does not exist yet, so let's create that function. So it's going to be a function that has the name of conditions fail, and receives an event. So the event of the that this component dispatch, and this is where we are going to use this reason. So let me correct this reason object. So we are going to extract that from the event. So we can say const reason equals event that detail that user data. So that's how it's called. So this is basically this. When this fails, we are going to receive this object, and here we are going to add a switch case block. So switch reason, and if the reason is that the user was let me copy this. If the user is unauthenticated, what we are going to do in this case is we're going to return, and here I'm going to use the push function from the router. Remember that we have this function available from the router. So what we are going to do is we're going to push the user to the login screen. So this is what is going to happen if the user is not authenticated and is trying to access, for example, this protected route. We are going to redirect them to the login route. And if the case is that the user is already authenticated and they are trying to access this signup, we are going to redirect them to the dashboard route. So that should be it. So this function is handling all the redirects in case any of these guards does not comply. So if the user is unauthenticated and they are trying to access the dashboard route, we are going to redirect them to the login screen. So that's how we are protecting our routes. So let me go back here. So I believe we are not authenticated. So now if I try to access the dashboard, we have an error. And let me see, reason. That's the error. Let me go back here where I am making this reason. So if we try to access the dashboard, now it works. So if we try to access the dashboard route, because we are not authenticated, is taking us back to the login screen. So that's correct, because we are not authenticated. So now, and we can't access the dashboard route anymore. So now if I authenticate with my credentials, I now able to see this dashboard route. So now what happens if I try to access the login route? It should take me back here because I am already authenticated. It's the same for the sign up. You can see that's getting us back here. So now we are back to this link, and if you remember, we want to have the ability to change our password. So we need to add this profile page. So let's start by doing that. And what we are going to do is we are going to create a new file in the page folder. It's going to be called profile.svelte, and where I'm going to copy again the code that we have in the login in in a sign-up screen. And the reason for doing this is because it will look kind of similar. The profile, we want a form that should be able to change our password. So let me change some things here. So here this is not, I will have this as a h2, and this is going to say change password. So this is going to be the message that we have, and this needs to be closed. This is not going to be a username, this is going to be our old password, and the same here, old password. We do have this error message here. This does not exist yet, and this is not the type of text. This will be the type of password, and here we need to bind the new password. And here we are going to have this new password label. So we have that, and now we need to change our variables. This is going to be our old password, and this is going to be our new password. And this is going to check, to remove the error, it's going to check for the old password, because that's where we can have a potential error, in the old password. And this function is going to be called change password, and we need to change that here, change password, and the endpoint that we want to use. Let me check in the routes, and this is the endpoint that we want to use, is the update password endpoint. So if we go back to the profile, here I'm going to change that route, and what we are going to pass here, we are going to pass the old password as and the new password. So this is the data that is this endpoint receive, and new password. And I believe that we don't have any data here, any relevant data. So, and we don't need to change the user, and also we don't need to change this. So we are doing that, and here the message, that the error that we can have is that the old password is incorrect. So we are going to check for that error here. If that's the case, we are going to set back the old password and the new password to the default values. New password, and the default value is going to be, the error message is going to be wrong old password. So we have that, and let me add this route into our routes. So I'm going to open the app.svelte file, and I'm going to add a new route here. The route is going to be profile. I'm also going to import that component from, so the component would be called profile, and this is coming from page/profile file, and here what we are going to do, we are going to wrap, and here is going to be the profile component. If something fails here, the reason is that the user is an authentic. This is also another protect route, because we only want to show this route to the users that are authenticated. So if we are going to copy the same logic here. So this will only be shown if we do have a user. And I need to add a comma here. And we have our routes. So you can see that we have that here. And now if I type wrong password, we should have an error. You can see that we have that error here. And we are showing the error, but if we have success, we also want to make sure that to show that to the user if everything was correct. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to add a new let success message, and this is going to here is where I'm going to add that success message equals password was updated correctly. This is our success message, correctly. And now I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add this at the top of the form. So if we have a success message, we're going to use this help, but this is going to have the class of success is success. And here we are going to render our success message. So now if I have an incorrect password, we have the error here. And if I do have the correct password, if I remember correctly, and I change that, we should have the correct password, but we have an error here. Bad request. Oh, wait. Incorrect old password. So I think it's the new. So this one was successful, but we are not seeing that in the UI. Success message. Success message. I also want to clean this if we have success here, and I think I will add a notification here so I can see if this is being shown. This is another class from Bulma, notification. I'm going to remove this is success. If success message. So let me try again. Okay, now we're showing the correct message. Password was updated correctly, so now it's working. Okay, so let me go back here. Okay guys, so finally I would like to fix some things that are wrong in the UI. Well, it's not a big deal, but I would like to fix that. So you can see that this is not looking good. We have this space that's not been used, and that's what, because I gave this title class to this element. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an spam property here that's going to have this title class, and here this is where I'm going to add that emoji, and now it looks correctly. So that's one thing that I wanted to fix. And well, this is not a problem, but I also wanted to add, so if I log out and I log in here, I don't have a way to sign up if I don't have an account. So what I'm going to add is in this sign up, in this login form, at the end, after the form tag, I'm going to add this markup. So it's just going to say ask if you don't have an account, and if you don't have an account, we're going to have this link that's going to give us to the sign up page. So this is what this is doing, and we have that here. And I want to do the same in the sign up. If I already have an account, I'm going to add a link to the login page. So let me go to the sign up. Here we're going to have this HR tag, and here I'm asking if you have an account, and if you do have an account, then you can log in here. So it was just a usability change. Okay guys, so that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you find, well, first congratulations again to reaching to the end. It was a long tutorial, but I hope you learned some things here. So hope you find this useful, and if you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps to making more. It really helps me to making more videos, and share this with someone you think it might be helpful. And thank you again for watching this content.